Hello, and welcome to this Miklix video where I'm going to show you how to defeat the boss called Jagged Peak Drake in Elden Ring. As you probably know, bosses in Elden Ring are divided into 3 tiers. From lowest to highest, field bosses, greater enemy bosses and finally demigods and legends. Jagged Peak Drake is in the middle tier, greater enemy bosses, and is found outdoors in the Jagged Peak area in the Land of Shadow. It is an optional boss in the sense that it is not required to defeat it in order to progress the main story of the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion. As I continued my ascent up the Jagged Peak, I once again came across some drakes. This time there were 2 of them, and unlike most of their brethren who have nothing else on their mind than coming up with elaborate plans to make me their next meal, these 2 were rather busy fighting each other. But knowing their nefarious nature, they were probably fighting over who would get to eat me. It's like they're totally obsessed with me. At this point, a wise and patient person would have waited for the fight to conclude, hopefully with one drake dead and the other severely injured. But since I'm known far and wide throughout the lands between and the Land of Shadow to not be able to let sleeping dragons lie, I can't really claim to be wise, and patience has certainly never been my main competence either. So needless to say, I couldn't stay out of the fight for very long. Once again it became apparent that everybody in this game considers me to be the bad guy. Even though these 2 had been clawing, biting, and breathing fire at each other for what I assume was all afternoon at least, as soon as I poked one of them with a tiny little sword, they both turned on me. Well, I think they both turned on me. It was a bit difficult to tell with all the huffing, puffing, flapping of wings and stomping around without concern for my safety or tender flesh. It seems that one of the drakes is really the boss and the other is a sidekick that appears to mostly be there for dramatic effect. At some point, I made a tactical retreat. I certainly did not run away, and the 2 drakes would go back to fighting each other, so I guess whatever it was they disagreed on still hadn't been settled. I'm still inclined to think that it's who gets to eat me, but it could also be an argument about whether to roast me, boil me, or just eat me raw. Or maybe it's whether I should be served with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. They certainly seem to be the types who would do something like that. If I'm going to be eaten by a dragon, I'm not particularly fussed about how they serve me. I'm much more concerned about avoiding the whole getting eaten by a gigantic tyrannical lizard situation in the first place, so I once again decided to interrupt their fighting and get this thing settled once and for all, preferably with 2 dead drakes and me still not eaten as the result. At this point, I got tired of running around trying not to get stomped on while attempting to melee the boss, so I gained some distance and whipped out my usual favorite dragon attitude readjustment tool, the Bolt of Gransax. Unfortunately, I wasn't wearing the Godfrey icon and the Shard of Alexander talismans that I usually use to boost its damage, so it didn't hurt the boss as much as I was hoping. Still, fighting dragons from range is much more comfortable than going melee. Once the boss died, I was startled to hear someone laughing at me. Fully expecting it to be some new and unknown kind of talking and laughing dragon that was trying to sneak up on me and devour me in some sort of weird and funny way, I immediately started looking around for the source of the rude amusement. As it turns out, it wasn't a new type of horrible yet funny dragon, it was just Igan the Drake Slayer who for once wasn't screaming in pain, but rather being in an unusually good mood at the display of my impressive prowess in battle. Or something like that. After I talked to Igan and allowed him to say more things about how awesome I am, he gave me his furled finger, which can be used to summon him for assistance against the top boss on the Jagged Peak. That's quite convenient, because that is exactly the one I'm going to see next, hoping to put an end to this infestation of dragons and drakes who all want to eat me. And now for the usual boring details about my character. I play as a mostly dexterity build. My melee weapons are the Hand of Malenia and the Uchigatana with keen affinity, but I mostly used the Bolt of Gransax in this fight. I was level 205 and Scadutree Blessing 11 when this video was recorded, which I think is reasonable for this boss. I'm always looking for the sweet spot where it's not mind-numbing easy mode, but also not so difficult that I will be stuck on the same boss for hours. Anyway, this is the end of this Jagged Peak Drake video. Thanks for watching. Check out the YouTube channel or Miklix.com for more videos. You could even consider being completely awesome by liking and subscribing. Until next time, have fun and happy gaming!